of course, obviously, until it's time you'd like to ask a question or so forth. And the second thing is that, well, we are recording, so this will be recorded and the recording will be available afterwards, so folks can check that out. So we're going to begin actually with Hillary Kane, who is the director of FEND. Hillary, all yours.
Great, and welcome everyone. So we have a really nice large group here, and so it might be a little too much time to go around and do introductions, and it does seem like a lot of folks know each other already, which is great, but feel free to plop in the chat, you know, who you are and where you hang your hat, just so that we can get to know each other a little better, or rename yourself, or both. But I'm Hillary Kane. I'm the director of FEND, which, for those of you unfamiliar, is the Philadelphia Higher Education Network for Neighborhood Development, which I know is a mouthful, but basically we are a network of colleges and universities in and around the Philadelphia region, supporting and promoting campus community partnership. We're based at Penn, but we work pretty closely and equally with almost all the colleges in the region. CCP has been a longtime member. You know, we work with Temple, LaSalle, Villanova, Rutgers, Camden, Bryn Mawr, you name it, the whole region, city and suburbs, including South Jersey. And we have developed a new college success network in the last couple of years and have been hosting some webinars. And so I'm just going to do a little bit of sort of a very brief FEND 101 and College Success Network 101, and then we're going to turn it over to our colleagues from CCP. So just the quick overview of FEND is that we are a membership organization of campuses, and our primary mission is to support those members and those campuses with their community partnership work. And so we do that in many different ways. Part of what we try to do is be a hub of networking. And so I like the fact that there was a lot of chit chat in the, you know, in the morning before the event got started, because in normal times, in physical, you know, face-to-face settings, we would really value that. You know, in some ways, that's the best part of the meeting, right? Is the who you meet and have those sidebar conversations with. So we're always trying to bring people together. We also serve as an information clearinghouse, and so the FEND Update, our weekly newsletter that someone mentioned, and I can put the link in the chat later in terms of how to sign up for that. If you're not getting our newsletter already, I really recommend it, because we do try to put out information every week about what's going on in the region, you know, what publications you might want to be reading, grant opportunities, job opportunities, volunteer opportunities. You know, it's pretty comprehensive. And then we also, you know, do training and technical assistance. So people call us and they pick our brains, and we're happy to do that for you as well. We deliver formal workshops, pop in on classes, whatever we're asked to do, we do it. We also do the matchmaking piece. So if people, campuses or community organizations are looking to partner and they're not really sure, they can come to us and say, oh, you know, hey, FEND, we need an organization that does, you know, health outreach in West Philadelphia. Who can you recommend? And we will try to make those connections. And then sometimes we actually have enough money that we can, you know, sort of, you know, pay it forward and make mini grants to our campuses to support more campus community partnership work. So that's FEND in a nutshell. We also run a few different programs directly, where we're sort of the convener regionally of a multi-institution partnership. I'm not going to go into each one specifically, but we do a lot with AmeriCorps. So both AmeriCorps Vista, where many of those members are either serving in public schools or in nonprofits. We have a part-time AmeriCorps program with Next Steps, which actually is most relevant to this conversation because it is designed to be a college success initiative. So we're enrolling mostly sophomores and juniors who are low income and first gen students, mostly students of color on Temple's campus, CCP, Kutztown, and Cabrini. And we've actually partnered with CME on that initiative. And then we also partner with the school district on their Gear Up program, and have, you know, in normal times, up to 150 college students from various campuses going into high schools to serve as college coaches on sort of the pre-college, you know, college access side. So that's a little bit of the work that we do. About 2 years ago, fall of 2018, we launched our College Success Network. And based on some prior work that we had done with focus groups and some convenings, we have basically come up with this framework of sort of 5 bucket areas that we think matter to student success. And so there are things like teaching and learning, and those are questions around, you know, do faculty understand what it means to teach first-gen students? Do they understand culturally relevant pedagogy? Are high impact practices like service learning and study abroad and internships equitably distributed on campus, or are only certain students taking advantage of those options? Financial and social support. I mean, in some ways that's the no-brainer, right? Money matters, right? So it's not just financial aid though, but other, you know, financial resources, you know, like we're seeing this rise of food pantries on campuses, and, you know, things like childcare, transportation. You know, that's a whole nother bucket of things that can make or break a student's college journey. A supportive culture and climate. And I would sort of put, you know, if I had to pick a bucket for today's call, I would sort of put CME in this bucket. Just, you know, does this campus feel welcoming to me and everywhere? And, you know, particularly for students of color at predominantly white institutions, you know, do I feel supported, and not just over here in the Black Student Center, but
I can
across
see it
campus?
but I can't see it.
Sorry, Sheree, are you having difficulties? Okay. The fourth bucket is advising and career pathways. So really thinking about, you know, what kind of supports do students get in terms of picking courses, making sure those courses align to a degree, making sure that degree aligns to a career, and that, you know, there's this horrible statistic about the number of Pennsylvania adults who have, you know, I want to say something like over 150 credits, but no degree, right? Like they have the volume of college, but they didn't do it in quite the right way, in quite the right order, and they still don't have an actual degree. And we certainly don't want to be, you know, we want to make sure that we're addressing that issue. And then the final piece for us is around data, and really thinking about our institutions, like what do we actually know about low-income students, about first-gen students, about other students with historical barriers to graduation, and are we changing practice as a result? Are we crunching the numbers and disaggregating the data? And then if we are, what are we learning and how are we changing? So this is sort of the framework for how we've kind of thought about our work. And as a result, what we've been doing since fall of 2018 is having a bunch of webinars. Before webinars were cool and sexy, we were doing them. And so this is just sort of a rundown of the webinars that we've had since last year, on topic, you know, and sort of by those bucket areas: data, you know, around the culture and climate conversations, the teaching and learning conversations, the finance conversations, and the advising and career pathways. And so we're very excited to kick off this one. All the recordings for these webinars are at that link, which we can also post in the chat. And that's basically it. And so our hope is to keep doing this and bringing people together, and a few other things that I think Janine is going to talk about. So I'm going to turn it back over to Janine to wrap us up and get us onto our speakers.
Sure, thanks, Hillary. So Hillary mentioned earlier that there's a FEND update that comes out every week. There's also a College Success Network newsletter that comes out monthly. And as you can see on the slide here, we do a couple different things with that. We put out announcements about upcoming events, not just from FEND, but from other organizations in the city. We talk about webinars, conferences, speakers, etc., that are coming up. We do a call for proposals for anyone that's out there that's looking to provide grants. We do resources. We let folks know about resources both locally and nationally. And just anything that we're coming across as FEND staff, as colleagues, that we think other folks should know about, whether it's conferences, whether it's things that we're reading, whether it's podcasts, etc. We try to make sure that those go out so that folks can see them as well. And to that point, if there are things that you and your organization want to make sure that others are aware of, if there are things that you're coming across in terms of resources or events, I would ask you to please let me know that if you'd like us to put that out through the FEND, either the FEND update or the College Success Network newsletter, and I'll put my information in the chat. You can email me directly, and we'll make sure that that information gets out there. And just to reiterate something that Hillary said earlier, if you want to subscribe to any of the FEND newsletters, you can do that on our website. and I'll put that information in the chat as well. And so, again, my big push with letting you know about this is not just to let you know that the newsletter exists, but to encourage you to share that information with us so that we can share it with our networks as well. So if there's information that you all want to make sure it gets out there, we would love to be a partner in making sure that that happens. And so I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shane, and we can get into the heart of our presentation today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Janine.
You're welcome.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Shane Nelson. I'm a support coach here at the Center for Male Engagement and also the Community College of Philadelphia. So what I'm going to do is make sure that we have these slides up and moving. And if I could just get some confirmation or some thumbs up, some reactions that we're all seeing the slides and seeing some thumbs, that's great. And present is up and moving. As we load, this is the perfect time for Zoom hold music. Let's see here. Perfect. So in terms of our lessons learned and lessons shared, one of the things that we wanted to embody was really crisis management energy. And this is how we've kind of adapted our framework and our work to support our students. And so we've already had a wonderful welcome. I've already introduced myself as a staff member, and so I'll pass it over to first Derek Perkins, aka Bossman, to hook up his introduction, and then we have our fellow support coaches on the call as well.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Derek Perkins. I'm the director, Bossman, director of Center for Male Engagement. I've been the director for going on 9 years and next year, which is incredible. But the program actually started in 2009, and it really gave birth, was actually conceived through our work with the Achieving a Dream. And really in terms of how we wanted to reduce the equity gap and achievement gap, particularly of students of color at community colleges. And so when we distilled the data, what we found out is, I'm sure that most of you also recognize, is that African-American males had the lowest retention rates and academic outcomes in comparison to any other group, and that we control for all particular variables. And so as an institution, we knew that we had to do better, right? Particularly for African-American men, not only for them, but also the communities and families that they serve and operate in. And so what we did, we really wanted to look at the program design, right? And so we wanted to make sure that anything that we did design in terms of the program was really data-driven, right? We wanted to make the distinctions between what we felt worked and what actually, what we knew would work, right? And that was really based on what the data was telling us. And so we relied on best practice. So we, Dr. Sean Harper, who's now, of course, at USC, was one of our founding board members. We also reached out to Lou Wood and other esteemed workers and scholars in this particular work to figure out what exactly we needed to do in the best interest of the men that we served. And we also, I think the most important thing we did, we talked to the students, right? We wanted to figure out what exactly they needed, right? So too often when we look at particularly programs that are designed for students of color, their voices are often omitted from the conversation. And then they could wonder why what they design doesn't actually meet the needs of the students that they serve. And so we had extensive study focus groups with our students. Coming from the community college, you know that our students are from all kind of walks of life and lived experiences. So we look at students from traditional students who come in directly from high school. We looked at adult learners, those who wanted to come in from part-time, full-time, those who were fathers, those who were returning citizens, those who were just high achievers, as well as those who would struggle through the academic pipeline. And wanted to get a sense of exactly what the things that they wanted and what they needed. And so after we had those particular conversations with our students, once we looked at the data, and more importantly, what we looked at the best practice, what we found out is that whatever we wanted to do, that the program design had to be clear and measurable, right? Particularly as related to persistence and academic outcomes. And also too, just understanding that our students come from every kind of walk of life and lived experience, that those particular services had to be holistic and more importantly, strength-based. When we also looked at the data, particularly around these kind of programs for men of color, what they tend to be was really deficit models, right? In terms of what the students didn't have and trying to increase that. But what we wanted to do is look at what are the strengths of particular of our students and actually to enhance those particular skills to increase their outcomes. The students in the focus groups talked about the staffing, right? They wanted to make sure that whoever was staffing the students, who was in the center, represented them, right? So that not only be relatable, but also empathetic and sensitive to some of their nuanced needs and understandings of being. They also talked about having a designated space for them, right? They wanted to make sure that whatever space that we did have available, that was visible. And so the college was very intentional in terms of having a physical space. We actually have 2 offices on our main campus. When we looked at the data, what we found out is most of these kind of programs, they didn't have a designated space. And so they would have a location that was located in the basement around the corner, you know, and you had to knock 3 times in order to get in. And that was only 12, and you had to have the back code, right? And so what we want to do is know the students at our particular institution are valued and we are prioritized, right? And so we want to make sure that they knew that and that the institution knew that as well. We also were very intentional in terms of how we branded the college, right? And so, and how we wanted our particular organization and program to serve as a counter narrative to some of these issues and concerns and false narratives that we have regarding Black males and particularly Black male achievement and their relationship to academics. And so what we wanted to do was do a job in terms of how we tell our own story, right? And so we looked at not only data, but our students and their particular experiences. We want to make sure that they had a holistic experience as they enter the college, but also was represented in different spaces that they normally would not occupy. Of course, I talked earlier about we wanted to have a student advisory board and a board because we want to, of course, hold ourselves accountable. What typically happens is, as staff, we have an idea of what works. And if we think that it works, then if it makes sense to us, then it makes sense for the students that we serve. And so we wanted to make sure that our students not only were a part of the conversation, that their voices were heard, but they were actually informing the policy and the practices and the programming that we design. And we also wanted too, in terms of our board, we wanted to make sure that our board held us accountable too, not just in terms of the funding, but also in terms of if we said we wanted to do career development, what it actually looked like in terms of how we prepared our students to be fully prepared and skilled in this global workforce. And so we brought in business leaders up on our board. We made sure that we had those that were involved in the mental health industry and the health industries as well. Those that were in STEM, as well as, of course, in academia. And so what we want to do, again, to make our experience as holistic as possible, but also hold ourselves accountable and making sure that we had our student voices and engaged throughout the whole process. Our program also is evaluated twice a year and is an external evaluator. Again, so making sure that what we said we were going to do, that we actually do. So they evaluate our program as well as provide us with recommendations in terms of how we want to move forward, but also, highlight those things that we are doing well. And again, all this work is really about making sure that our students are prepared for taking their rightful places in this particular world. As I became a director, one of the things that I wanted to do, I was very intentional on, is creating a space that I wanted to have when I was in higher education. And so what I try to do is now in terms of the staff that we have, and the staff is representative of the students. So we have, students, part of our staff who went directly through the higher, through the K through 16 pipeline without stopping. We had some students who, stopgap. We had other staff from all, other parts of the country coming in to become a part of the program. And so again, we wanted students to see themselves as a global citizen, understanding that they needed to take their rightful place, but more importantly, that we affirm them. And once we affirm them, this allowed them to be able to see themselves as they're not normally seen and celebrated. And this was kind of the formation of the program. So I know some of you may have not been on the call earlier, but as Kevin Covington mentioned, he was actually one of our founding support coaches. He was at the start of the program even before I was there. And he mentioned that the grant started as a one-year grant, right? And now we're going into our 10th year. And that's just because of not only the staffing, but the program, the intentional program that we're doing, but also in terms of the institutional support. And so what I'm now going to do is transition into one of our other support coaches to really kind of dive in terms of what the actual work looks like.
Thank you so much, boss. We do have a question coming in that I think
Sure.
you'd be the ideal person to answer.
Sure.
And so, could you dig a little bit into why evaluation only happens twice per year?
So that's just based on the grant. So our grant is federally funded through the United States Department of Education. And so as a part of their evaluation, they do it in terms of external evaluation, they do it twice a year. They do it at the end of the fall semester and the end of the spring semester, just to make sure that any kind of recommendations that they provided in the fall, that they were actually played out in the spring and actually through the summer. But internally, we evaluate daily, weekly in terms of the work that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also week, and we had to do a weekly report as well as a monthly report to my particular supervisors, just in terms of the work that we're doing. So that's based on the number of outreach that we're doing for our students, making sure that all of our services that we are aligned, that we're doing that on a weekly basis as well as on a monthly basis. But just in terms of our federal funding, we had to do it. They require that we do it on biannually.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we want to capture in our presentation as well is really helping you all understand that this presentation is a way to provide support for individuals that are providing support. We want to make sure that we're continuing to reach out to all of our students in the midst of the chaos going on around us. And we're starting a new conversation on self-sufficiency and resilience. Future Dr. Perkins provided us an amazing breakdown of why we do this work. And I really want to drill down the fact that this session really is to kind of show you all, partners of FEND and FEND, that CME can happen anywhere and everywhere, and we need it to. So I'm going to swing it over now to Pat, who will kind of go over our outcomes. There we go.
Appreciate you, Shane. So Shane and Boss just covered some of the why and who CME is. We'll get into more of that later, but I just wanted to give you all an idea of some things that you'll gain and take away from this presentation or this dialogue that we're having. So you have the opportunity to learn more about our initiative as far as it goes to retention and enrollment of diverse populations. We'll also have the opportunity to engage around, just to engage between the different institutions that we're all from and share on how we're supporting men of color at our different institutions to see what might work at our universities that we can take and pull back. And also you'll gain a resource guide full of best practices to support men of color from a holistic lens. And that's like one of the lenses that we look to our students too. So those are some of the outcomes that you'll walk away with. And then also I'll share more about who CME is in theory. And just to take a step back, my name is Patrick Robinson, support coach in CME. It's wild because the pandemic or COVID has like threw off all sense of time in my brain. So I'm pretty sure I've been here for 2 years now. I think it's 2 years. And Philadelphia school system, I went to Westchester University and also previously worked at some other higher ed institutions. And the dope thing about CME is like, I've never seen a space like this that is as intentional as we are as looking at our students from a holistic lens to support it. So I'm just blessed to be a part of this conversation and to be here to share this with you. So I'll jump in to it. So who we are in theory. So African-American males and other male students of color are more likely to persist and graduate if, again, going back to that holistic, intentional, and culturally responsive lens that we look through. So one of the first points that we try to work through is a community of support, mentorship, and strong peer-to-peer connections. And we achieve some of that through, one, us being support coaches, setting that community of support. And Corey will touch on this in a little bit, but he's even, since we made the transition to going online, we wanted to be as intentional as possible about surrounding our students with as much support as possible, in addition to just a support coaches. So Corey has created a mentorship program with external mentors that are outside of CCP that we're connecting our students to, just to give them another level of support and resource outside of the college. And then that peer-to-peer connection, we also have peer coaches that work in our office, because we could talk to our students until we're blue in the face and they won't sometimes listen to us, but a student could say literally the same exact thing that Shane, Corey, or Al, or boss might have just said, and it'll hit in a different way and connect. So we just try to be intentional in those type ways. And we also have enhanced orientation to the expectations and rigors of college, which we'll touch on in a little bit as well. I'll be able to give some more details on how we achieve that. And then in addition, we have actionable academic, financial, and career development plans. And a lot of that is achieved through one-on-one conversations that we may have and just intentional workshops that we may have, because we realize that our students are more than just CCP students and that they have other interests. So we'll try to be as intentional as possible with having workshops, whether it's financial literacy, real estate, but just things to give them more information so they're able to make more sound decisions as to how they want to move in their lives. And then in addition to that, actively and civically engaged in the college community. One of the great things that we're able to do, or one of the rewards that from our work, is to see the growth in our students. So to see a student who might come in during the summer program who might not have all the confidence in their voice or their story yet, but then we could fast forward a semester or two later where boss might tap on their shoulder to be a part of this community panel with the president of the college and other community stakeholders around the city, and they can get on that panel and give back in a way that they feel comfortable. So it's dope to see the growth and how we're intentional about putting our students in different ways or positions to give back, whether it's on the Zoom call or going out to clean up in the community. And then in addition to that, just the experiential and educational learning experiences that come between school and career. So again, just us intentional between the different workshops and the mentorship program, just trying to link our students up with as many resources and connections as possible so that they can be as informed as possible to move in this world, because it's a lot going on. So we just want to make sure that they are as connected as possible. And then lastly, just culturally relevant instruction and programming that affirm their academic abilities. Because I'll speak for myself, but going through the public school system, there weren't many opportunities where I had to learn about people who looked like me outside of like the staple MLK, Malcolm X, or like just those staple household figures. So even with the introduction of the Black Studies program now that we have at CCP, and how a lot of our students have gravitated towards that major, and that major alone has like awoken them in a way where now they're taking things in addition to the major seriously, but just giving them a sense to learn who they are, just give them the confidence to move more confidently as overall students. So that's a bit of who we are in theory, and I can pass things over to Corey, who'll give you more information on how we actually achieve these things in practice.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us again. My name is Corey Delaney. I'm a support coach at CME. It is so good to see everyone. I have been here for a little over a year now. So it has been a blessing to work with such gentlemen that I do, as well as Ms. Hope, and to have a foundation from Kev. So all is one, right? So I'm from Pittsburgh. I'm sorry in advance. You know, we had to do our thing this weekend, but you know, that's just how it rolls sometimes. And I moved out here in 2012 for grad school, where my focus was Afrocentric education. I've worked in various higher education institutions as well as higher ed nonprofits. So I can truly say that CME is a unique place, both in theory, like Pat discussed, but also in practice. So I'll just go over a few of I'll go over all 6 of the titles you see before you, and also allow my fellow support coaches to discuss their unique roles in their program. So life skills, right? Life skills are our programming and resources that provide education and a safe space for our students to learn about themselves and tools to continue to grow, right? So these life skills contain some of the soft skills that we learn, you know, whether going into the professional field, but also includes how to regain control of your breath. So breath work, meditation, yoga, things that, again, if you can, you know, control your breath in situations, like we have different yoga teachers. We actually had a yoga instructor last week, Jean-Jacques, come in and do yoga with us. Because it's our belief, like Pat mentioned, in the holistic nature of our support, that if they can control their breath, then if they come into a situation where they're challenged or conflicted, whether it's outside of school or in school, they have that tool that they can refer to and use. Our goal in Life Skills is to give our students as many tools that we can to grow. So that also includes financial management, goal setting, and time management. So again, if you can, you know, people can have, it's like bees buzzing in a hive sometimes in our minds, right? So if you can really control, like, all right, my goal is this, I'll put pen to paper and write it out. It becomes real. And then the student can go back and realize those goals through objectives. So it's really, it sounds simple in nature, but it's something that I definitely had to learn through and struggle through. And these tools give our students a lift as far as when they move on to other institutions, whether it's four-year institutions, entrepreneurship, etc. And also lastly, social justice. So we had Black Lives Matter come and do a presentation on what social justice looks like for BLM Philly, as well as we had Representative Malcolm Kenyatta come on and do a voting rights workshop with our students, discussing the power of voting, and especially now. The next one we have is leadership development. So this is all about ensuring our students have access to conferences centered on college student leadership, mentors who are experienced leaders in the Philadelphia community, as well as work study jobs, like Pat mentioned, peer coaches, who are seasoned CME students who can relate with their peers on a level that we may not be able to. Like Pat mentioned, our mentoring program is one of the offshoots that I head, and it, again, before, I feel like we had, like, before COVID, after COVID. Before, we had in-person mentors. So every month we would have what's called an S3 series, where we would meet the last Friday of each month, and it would be Black and brown men from all across the Southeastern region come in and meet with our guys, and we would discuss a unique topic that the support coaches and boss man we have seen over that month. So it could be something as something like mental health traumas and how we overcame ours, or it could be something around, you know, time and how we can control time, or deficit thinking, or growth mindset. So having had that taken away for the in-person over the summer, I created, along with our core mentors and as well as my support coaches and boss, their help on getting mentors and mentees together. And this fall we are redoing that, and we've seen that grow by 50%. So the summer really gave us a lot of good insight on how mentoring can work virtually. And like Shane mentioned, as many weaves and threads as we can put in the support of our students, we want to make sure that that thread is there, because that thread might be the one that saves a student from, you know, worrying about the final or something else. So that's the mentoring program in a nutshell. But I want to turn over real quick to Pat to discuss our summer enrichment program. So if you can, Pat.
Gotcha. Thank you. It's funny that when you were talking through everything, I was thinking like how it's funny, like COVID is put things in like a Bible term, where like before, like AD, BC. In my mind, it's like pre-COVID, during COVID. So the summer program is like my baby at this point. I'll talk about the summer program, how it was run prior to COVID, and then I'll talk a little bit about the transitions and the updates that we were able to make online. So pre-COVID, our summer program was built to um, accommodate 75 new students to CCP. It was a 4-week program where students had the opportunity to get college level instruction to give them an idea of what college would be like when the semester started. So students would come in and take a placement test, and based off of where their placement test scored, they would take that English and math class over the course of the 3 weeks. So they would have those courses with CCP instructors, and the aim of it was that the end of the summer program, they would be able to retake the placement test and potentially score higher, just so that they were able to maybe bypass certain developmental courses that they have to take, because a lot of our students who come in don't come in at the level where they're ready to take college level courses from the start. So we give them the opportunity to retake that placement test so that they can, save money and start at a higher level. And what it does also is give them a higher confidence and just give them an idea of what the college classroom will be like. And again, with our summer program, we understand that our students are more than just students, and that sometimes that there are outside barriers that can sometimes get in the way of their academic success or academic progress. So we were very intentional about trying to eliminate some of those barriers so that they were able to just focus on school and be the best that they could be. So we would provide them with weekly SEPTA trans passes, just so they didn't have any issues as far as transportation. They could get from home to CCP, CCP to home. And the great thing about it, what the students loved, it was a real weekly trans pass. So they could still go out on the weekend, after school, go to work, and still have that transportation. And then another thing, especially that we're seeing now during this COVID times, is just how real of an issue food insecurity is. So we also provided breakfast and lunch to the students every day of the summer program, just so they had transportation and meals. And then in addition to those 2 resources, students that completed the summer program were also given a stipend. So we literally paid you, fed you, and found you a way to get to school, just so that you could start the fall just more confident in your abilities and already come in with a sense of connections and resources to the college. But then just to fast forward to COVID, how we had to pivot and make some changes. So this past summer, we took the summer program and transitioned to doing it online. So we made some adjustments this year. So instead of let me backtrack. So the first 3 weeks at CCP, pre-COVID, when we were doing a summer program, we were at CCP. And in that 4th week, we spent the week at Kutztown University. So we stayed in the dorms, everything. So just to plant that seed in the students' mind that there are more things after CCP, if that's the decision that you wanted to go. So that they could start to envision themselves being on a college campus, so they can get that excitement, just so that when they were lacking motivation during CCP, they could remember that Kutztown trip, like, you know what, that's where I want to be at the end of this. That's my motivation. So that was just another great thing. And then while we were at Kutztown, we would go whitewater rafting, just trying to put them in a bunch of situations that they might have not had exposure to before, just to show them all of the things that might be out there they might have interest or likes in. So just trying to expand how they see and view the world and view themselves in it. Sorry, just jumping all over the place, but just to move forward to the summer program this summer that we did online, it was, I guess, why did it just end it? It was 2 or 3 weeks this year. And the aim of it this year was just to make sure that they felt connected to the college. So each day we had different representatives from the college to come in, whether it was our tutors, our learning lab, financial aid, just so that the students felt more comfortable. They could identify different names or faces from these different offices, so that when the semester started, they would feel equipped and comfortable. And then we had workshops as well. So it was just cool to see us transition a lot of the work that we did in person to still be able to successfully do it online this past summer.
Yeah, thank you, Pat.
And forgive me if I missed anything, because we do so much and it's easy to forget some things. So I think I covered it.
Yeah. Indeed. So real quick, thank you, Pat. There's 2 questions I want to answer briefly. The second one is easier to answer. So what was the amount of the stipend given out, and did we find that it was a big incentive for participation? Bossman, I think it was 300, correct?
Yes, yes, it's $300. And yes, it was a big incentive for some students. One, because students, for a lot of our students, they had to make the decision whether or not they could be a part of the program, because the program ran from 8:30 to 3, Monday through Thursday. And so for some of our students, just in terms of their work obligations, they had to make that kind of calculated decision whether or not to be a part of the summer program, or risk not having income. And so to remove some of that concern for some of our students, we made the decision to provide them with a stipend. We encourage the students, of course, to use that stipend for educational purposes. Of course, we weren't always successful in that, but that was a goal. So again, as Pat mentioned, what we wanted to do, particularly for the summer program, was remove as many barriers as possible for our students to be able to participate. So with the weekly TransPass, with the food, we provided also with school materials, so they didn't have to worry about that. All of that was free of charge for our students, and with the stipend. So yes, it was an incentive, but they knew that in order for the students to receive the stipend, it was based on meeting certain incentives. So they had to attend, they had to be actively engaged, they had to do the assignments that we did. So they couldn't just show up, right? They couldn't just be present, they had to be active and to receive the stipend.
Yep. Thank you, boss. And then the first question we had was, does CCP embody culturally informed pedagogy across the institution? If so, can we provide an example or two? Yes. Which so lovingly brings us into our next topic, which is our culturally informed pedagogy. But the college in particular, yes. So I know Dr. Generals was very instrumental in creating, actually this past summer, a series which is still going on called Enough is Enough. And these are a series of workshops. Some were led by our Black Studies department, like Dr. Love, Dr. Primus Oates, and Dr. Conga, where we discussed various topics around Black Lives Matter movement and the uprisings that took place. We had scholars and activists come on discussing the trans community in Philadelphia and as a whole, and the intersections that our students face. We have one coming up on environmental justice, which is going to focus on urban spaces and environmental justice in urban spaces. So that is an example of the college. I hope that answered that question. But for us, as you know now, our work centers on Black and brown men. So we believe it's our duty to show our students what they can be, with references to which they can relate to. So whether that's our staff, our speakers, our workshop leaders, any book recommendations we give, pictures on slides, yoga instructors, we always want to make sure that a student in our program can see themselves at all times if possible. And as I mentioned, my research in grad school was Afrocentric education. So I'm gonna pull a little quote real quick, bear with me. So Afrocentric agency, right? So I studied under Dr. Asante, who coined the term Afrocentricity, which basically means putting African people across the diaspora in the center of our story. We're no longer marginalized to the outsides. We are the center of our story. So in that, we become the center of our program at CME. And what I mean by agency is, it is the ability, and I'm gonna read this verbatim. So agency itself is the ability to provide the psychological and cultural resources necessary for the advancement of human freedom. When agency does not exist, we have the condition of marginality, and the worst form of marginality is to be marginal within your own story, right? So oftentimes, like Boss Man mentioned, it's a deficit model where we are the outside of the story, but the challenges we experience are the center. So what we want to do is make sure that at all times, with whatever we're doing, whether it's a retreat, whether it's exposing the students, like Pat mentioned, to whitewater rafting, or yesterday I had a student who's one of our students who's an amazing photographer, and we had a photo shoot in Wissahickon Park, and he's from Philly, never been in Wissahickon Park, right? So now he knows, oh, I have cool backdrops. We expose them to spaces where they belong, because again, it is about the advancement of their freedom. Moreover, the systemic marginalization of Black and brown men in education is historically proven. We can look to Cool Posing on Campus by Harris, Palmer, and Struve, which dive into the intersection of masculinity and gender role conflicts. Ideas like being tough, independent, emotionally restrictive are, some instances good, but they may often lead to building barriers to help, assistance, support, and love. I know one thing that Bossman always mentions is sometimes our students don't know what love or support looks like. So we have to show patience when we're showing support or love, because they don't know how to receive that sometimes, again, because these barriers that Black men sometimes put up. So it's our job at CME to break down these barriers and allow our students the safe space to explore who they are, where they come from, and what they can become. Next, we have our career achievement. So college is often set up for people to think of job is the outcome after I graduate. And for some, that's the case. But one thing that we wanted to make sure that we created was, again, in an Afrocentric informed programming, is the theory of Ubuntu, which means I am because we are. So when we discuss our careers with students in entrepreneurship, we always start with, okay, what are you passionate about? What are some of your skills? But what does your community need? Because you are not doing this for you alone, you're doing this for the whole, and it all comes back around. So I know Shane has created an amazing career achievement program, the CAP program, that I definitely want to turn over to him to discuss more about that. Can you hear me, Shane? Can anyone hear me? Okay. So I don't know if Shane can hear me. He might not be able to. But I can go over the career achievement program.
2 seconds, Corey.
No worries, man.
That's the hardest part about these Zoom conversations is it's harder to get a feel on like the audience. Like, can they hear me? Can they see me?
I know, right?
I'm coming in all right. Let me know.
Yeah, you good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, in terms of career achievement, and I'll be brief here, one of the things that I got inspired by at Drexel was the co-op program. So that's where I did my undergrad, and then I completed my master's in higher ed over at Syracuse. And when given the opportunity to really center the voices of our students in career achievement and career development, we used Tara Yoso's community cultural wealth model as a way to help our students see that there was a potential misalignment in being a server at Chili's and trying to be a computer scientist.
Okay.
One of the primary barriers that we noticed for unpaid internships was that it was unpaid, and so our students didn't value that time and that experience development because they have bills now. They can have a career in the future, but again, they have bills now. They need to eat now. And so what we created was a way in which students could receive experience not only in their career field, but also remote work opportunities. So every single employer partner that we had agreed to take on a student, respected the fact that while they have in-person work that they need to do, all of our students were going to work remotely to develop those skills and to really bolster that remote work acumen that they're going to need for this new industrial revolution that we're experiencing. And we provided students with a stipend of $2,000. So they would get paid out biweekly in accordance with how the college sets up student work. But the employer partners did not need to come out of pocket a single cent. So what we did was had about 5 students complete the full program over the summer. And now 2 of our students are still persisting through the fall. So we have Ty, who is still helping out with the forest fire project over in LA, actually, where they're utilizing folks who are currently in the incarceration system but are looking for employment opportunities to leverage their work experience fighting wildfires to gain actual employment. And so Ty has been really crafting those digital stories. And then we have Lamar working with Achievability here in West Philadelphia, really ensuring that their lunch program is set up accordingly. And Lamar is also connecting students with, program participants, excuse me, with new opportunities to get access to housing and other things. And so I'll pass it back over to Corey.
Cool. Thank you. And I do see your question, I believe, Kristen. I'm going to get to that in one moment at the end. But thank you for your question. So again, thank you, Shane. Next, we have mental health. So the pivotal first step to, again, holistic healing and wellness begins, we believe, with the mind, right? If you have the ability to control your thoughts and the various, again, the bees buzzing in your mind, if you can take a bee out one at a time, examine it, and move it forward, you have the ability to control many other variables in your life. But there, of course, exists a negative stigma from receiving a mental health support, especially within the Black community and especially within the amongst Black men. So this part of our work centers around breaking down that negative stigma in the various ways that Corey has done so. Like I talk about my own experience with our guys, very vulnerable with our guys, opening the door for them to be vulnerable with us. Similarly, I can say for Shane, Pat, now we're all very open with things that we're working on, things that we're getting better at, also things that we have challenges with. But it's important to note here that we do not ever act as experts in mental health, whereas we are providing therapy or counseling of sorts. What we do have is we work very closely with CCP counselors to whom we refer students for proper therapy and counseling. So we act as a resource for that. There are things like, my girlfriend broke up with me. We can talk through that with you, or things like that. But if it's something more serious of nature, we always refer students to counseling. So I just want to make that very clear. And we also make sure we keep adequate notes because, again, we don't want to get things lost in a vortex and then have to repeat the steps we took for that student to get better. And we have an amazing orchestrator of our mental health programming, who is Al Swindle. So I'll turn it over to Al to discuss those programs and notes.
Thanks, Corey. Can everybody hear me good?
Yep.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Albert Swindle III, and I head up the mental health portion of CME. I recently came aboard to CME in February of this year. So it's kind of a running joke that I kind of brought COVID into the door with me. So I think I was on campus for maybe a month and a half before working from home. So it's been a great journey, challenging, of course, but here at CME, we love challenges. Oh, hello?
Hey, yep, we can hear you.
You're all good, Al.
All right, can you see me? I can't see anything. Hold on one second. Oh, okay. Sorry, guy.
It's cool.
My computer screen just went blank. All right, so in the mental health space of CME, we see our students come in with all kinds of positive things, but we also see some kind of challenges that our students definitely need. So with the mental health program, I try to start off the day with daily affirmations. So when we come in the morning, when we used to go to our office in the morning, and also now virtually, we try to start off with those daily affirmations. So the daily affirmations can be as simple as I can achieve greatness. And these are things that we try to explain to our students that you have to build positive routines. So whatever happened in the past, whether positive or negative with yourself, with your family, at this point as a college student and as we're growing into grown-ups, we have to start new positive routines. So that's a really great thing that we do with our students. And every morning, reciting daily affirmations. I believe I can do everything. Everything that is happening for my ultimate good. So getting the student into a positive frame of mind at the beginning of the day, the beginning of the week, definitely helps those students out. Another thing that we do with the mental health program is we talk about stigmas so much. In the African American community, stigmas are humongous. It's our students, they try to open up to us, but they don't know how to open up to us. They don't know how to talk about mental health. And what we at CME want to do is we want to make it a regular conversation. We want to make it a daily conversation. What's going on now? COVID, isolation, depression, anxiety. We have so many hidden mental health issues going on with our students that we try to pull it out of them. We try to divulge our own issues and challenges, which it definitely makes our students open up and come in. We create safe spaces virtually. When we're in the office, we had safe spaces where our students can feel free to come in and talk about anything that they want to talk about. Whatever it is, they can lay it out on the table and understand that we'll try to work with them on that. Also, as Corey said, we do partner with CCP's counseling office. And if there's anything that's kind of above our level or over our heads, we definitely hand off and send a referral to our counseling department.
Indeed.
And yes, and in this program, what we have done is contracted and partnered with a certified life coach and therapist who completed a presentation last month, which our students attended, and we did a focus group after, and our students really loved the presentation. Our students suggested that we should have this presentation once a month, and they really enjoyed, I guess I call it getting things off your chest. So they really, really, really enjoyed that. So we're partnering with the life coach and therapist to have a mental health and wellness series that's going to happen once a month. And this life coach will talk about the coping skills, the stigmas. They'll talk about anxiety, depression, and all kinds of other mental illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
They'll also talk about balance, having balance in your life, whether it's physical, spiritual, environmental, social, emotional, and intellectual. Talk about the triggers, the warning signs. I mean, if you're excessively worrying all the time, that's a warning sign of something. If you're having extreme mood changes, that's a sign. So we dive in, every month we'll dive into one of those topics and drill down and have that space where we have those conversations with our students. And again, it's to get them talking about this regularly, because mental health is a taboo in the African American community. I mean, it just is, especially with the males. We don't seek therapy. We don't care for therapy. We think it's weak or crazy to go to a therapist. And these are things that we learned, from life experiences. It could be parents, family members, but we want to break that mold. We want to have communication, and we want to talk about these things.
Yep.
Another thing we do is, what I did is kind of created a template for how we document things for our students now. We definitely not only capture our students' goals, our students' academic performance and career aspirations and leadership, but we want to also document so that others can see our students' moods. If our students are having any issues as far as mental health is concerned, we want to have that documented so we can kind of have a running tab of our students from fall semester beyond. So if there's any patterns, we can see, we can definitely pick up on those patterns and try to dive right in.
Yep. And that's a great segue into the academic support, because those notes we use in various ways, but one of those is Starfish. So we make sure that we keep adequate notes in Starfish that professors, counselors, CME, support coaches, anyone who has access can make notes for a particular student. So again, we're providing that holistic support. You also have tutors. So we have CME specific tutors for math, for writing, for reading, and CIS, Computer Information System. So these are CME specific tutors who work with our guys specifically. And last is our relationship with the professors. So the question from Kristen, what we have is us, right? So a student will come to me and say, hey, I think, something a little shady with my professor. Can, you talk? So we will be the in-between for our students to advocate for them. We also lovingly help our professors who might not be culturally informed, who might not teach from a culturally informed place. We lovingly help them recognize some of the downfalls of the previous ways that they might have been engaging with our Black men and brown men. And then we show them, like Malcolm X said, rather than show them a dirty cup of water or how dirty their cup of water is, we show them how this beautiful, clean cup of water is going to be moving forward. So how can they address, certain things that happen in the classroom from a culturally informed place? So if there's no other questions about CME in practice, we can definitely move on. Hillary, we'll talk offline about that. No, I'm joking. Yeah. So actually it is a one-to-one. So we never want to, again, when working with other professionals, we never call out anyone in the classroom or anything like that. It's always professional. Some professors don't hear us all the time. So we have to work around that. But yeah, definitely no public shaming. No. We're not about that. But we do hold professors accountable to making sure that they address humans as humans and not, pick and choose who they can give their respect to.
Yeah. Now, I just going to chime in too, because I think that's a great question, Christian and Hillary, regarding that. And so one of the first things that I had to recognize when I became the program director of CME is that in order for the program to be effective and impactful, that I couldn't just be a program director. I had to be a college administrator, right? Because our program is not self-contained, right? So what was often happening is that our students, if they were connected to CME, they were treated as CME students and not CCP students, right? And so I had to do what I needed to do in terms of kind of change those particular narratives. And so not only in terms of with our students and how we do sessions regarding microaggressions and what it actually looks like, talking about hidden biases, in terms of not only with what those things are, right, but your reactions to those particular things. So we talk about how to our students regarding those particular issues too, but I'm also active in terms of our diversity, inclusive and equity work. So I do presentations on campus and workshops. I do them in department head meetings as well as on part of our professional development trainings. And so we talk about these really, critical issues relating to kind of cultural responsive programming. So we talk about microaggressions, hidden biases. We have sessions regarding racism 101. We talk about inclusive syllabi. So we try to make it as inclusive, but in a way that not making it shaming, providing information to people, right? But with the idea is that in order for our students to be successful, that they would have to think differently and act differently regarding these particular issues. And so those are the ways that we inform the college as well.
Thank you, boss.
Yep.
Kevin has a question. So what offices and departments within the college would we say are key to supporting the efforts at CME? You can definitely speak to the counseling department, Single Stop. So Single Stop is a place where students can get help and resources with taxes and other financial information, academic advising, financial department, are also places. But yeah, I don't know if I'm missing any. I know we want to move on to Leroy's story in a moment.
Yeah. And just quickly, Kevin, I think a lot of people experience this at other institutions. I know Corey just mentioned the departments, but too often it's really about the relationships within the departments and not the departments themselves, right? And so there are key people within the departments that we know that are really about and really supportive of CME and our particular efforts. And to be honest, we know that not all are supportive of the work that we're doing, right? We're just going to be honest and transparent in that. And so it's really about how do we cultivate those particular relationships within those particular departments and accessing those particular relationships in order to affect and support the efforts of the program.
Yep. Thanks, Bob. So Shane just put a YouTube link in the chat. So for the next minute, we want everyone, take a break, take a breather. I know we discussed a lot, and it's a lot to take in. So we want to make sure that you hear from one of our students, from his own words, what CME means to him, to add more texture to the conversation. So if you can, please go to the Zoom group chat, highlight and copy the YouTube link that Shane put in the chat, and then we'll come back after everyone finishes. The video is 55 seconds, so we'll come back in about a minute, and if everyone can just type in done when they have finished, and we'll start when almost everyone has finished. So yeah, I'll see you back in a minute.
Why CME? CME is a place of nourishment.
Cool, it looks like almost everyone's finishing up. So I will briefly go over our impact then with Al. Al is amazing with numbers. I failed accounting statistics 3 times in a row, fall, spring, and summer semester. So he can definitely speak better than I. But as you can see, so we have our 3 subjects. We have the CME participants, African-American men who are not a part of CME, and the college as a whole. So as you can see, our impact then, fall 2009, the first inaugural year of CME. And as you can see, compared to African-American males not a part of CME, we are doing better. Again, this is not a race. This is just the data that shows the information. So this is retention. So that's a great question, Hillary. This is persistence data. So this is from semester to semester. 45% of CME participants persisted in fall 2012 to fall 2013, compared to 39% of Black men not a part of CME and 47% college-wide. I know Shane, Al, if you have something to add to that. Yeah.
So these are first-time college students. So students that come into CCP with no prior experience, first time in their families, going to college. So as Boss said, CME started in the fall of 2009, and we're in the fall of 2020. So almost 11 years that this program has been running. So that says something in and of itself. So these numbers, we can talk about all the things that we do on a daily basis, monthly basis, but we do need numbers and we need data to show what's actually happening. So again, we have our CME participants who are actually enrolled in CME. Then we have our African-American males that attend CCP but are not enrolled with CME. And then we have our college-wide, which is the college as a whole. So these numbers just show that CME participants persist in our program. Again, it's wrapped around our whole intentional, holistic, and culturally responsive programming. It wraps around our staff. It comes straight from our boss, future Dr. Derek Perkins, and it trickles down to our staff. So we kind of take we take our lead from Boss Man, and again, we pour it out to our students. So again, our numbers as far as the CME participation, if you see, we kind of we try to outpace the college and our students persisting from year to year.
Yep. And similarly on the most recent data we received from from fall 19 to this past spring, you can see full-time is the light blue and part-time is dark blue. Again, CME students, non-CME African-American males, and college-wide. So the data, again, speaks for itself. I know we want to move on. If anyone has any specific questions around the data, we can definitely speak to that offline, more in depth. But the first graph we have are new students, and the other graph we have are returning students. So if there's no questions, yeah, I'll turn it over to Pat and Al.
I'll start. So our impact now, virtually, what we do now, of course, everything's virtual. So we have at least 1,000 individual communications with our students each week. So we achieve this by email, text, phone calls, Zooms, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We try to tap into every avenue that we think and that we know that our students frequent. So we talk to our students about, if you check Instagram, you should check your email just as much, and respond. So we try to get our students to simply sometimes show up to things. Increase participation at the college and student leadership. So as we've been talking about, we try to place our students in those leadership positions so they have the experience, so they have the confidence to be able to speak in front of audiences, the confidence to know that what they've learned they can put into practice. Also, our innovative programming. I know we talked a lot about our programming, so I don't want to harp on it too much, but our programming challenges our students to think. You know, it's not easy, but we challenge our students. Patriarchy, mental health stigmas, as we talked about, homophobia and transphobia. We are an inclusive program. So there's no judgments. We talk about LGBT. We talk about deficit thinking and also our career aspirations. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I'll hand it over to Pat.
Yeah, I mean, I'll make sure I'm not on mute. I'm good. I'll cover a lot of it. And now with our impact now, especially with COVID, we've had to get creative and more innovative with how we've been intentional with supporting our students. I mean, we've always had the holistic lens, how we've been going over. But now we're just seeing, with everything going on, whether it's the quarantine, things being shut down, all of the social injustice that's been going on, we've had to make it a priority to really emphasize supporting our students outside of the academic space. So one of the blessings about CME that I appreciated when we were in person was just the environment that we were able to set in the office. So to now be able to try to set that environment as best as we can online to give students a place where they feel safe, comfortable, and in a place where they still trust us to learn and grow. Is something that's been rewarding. But it's been the same as far as things that we were doing pre-COVID. It just transferring a lot of those things to being online and try to be creative about how we deliver it to make sure students are fully receiving the messages that we're trying to send down to them.
And so I'll jump in a little bit again, with interest of time. We really want to get to our breakout sessions, but we really try to ground all of our work within theoretical frameworks to make sure that we're taking the best practices from higher ed scholarship and making sure that it makes sense for our students and the work that we do as practitioners. And so we utilize the phenomenological variant of ecological systems theory. I think I need to say phenomenological the second time and then phenomenological a third time to make sure that I really have it. But really this framework is perfect for us because as Pat mentioned, we set up that environment that then helps a student move through whatever stressful situation that they're trying to adjust to. We give them some powerful coping mechanisms from our life skills and mental health front. And then with our culturally relevant pedagogy, really making sure that we're helping them reimagine their narrative and really craft identities that speak to our work as a center, speak to the principle of Ubuntu, and really help them come out of this with some really strong outcomes. So not only are they leaving with an extra piece of paper and maybe some new resume bullet points, but they're leaving with a really enhanced perspective on life and how they navigate the world. And so what that all turns into really is crisis management energy. And I'll swing it back over to Pat to really break these points down in more detail.
Appreciate you, Shane. So again, the crisis management energy, the skills and habits that help individuals respond proactively and positively to uncertainty. This point just goes to, again, we realize that our students are more than just students, and they, like Boss reminds us a lot of the times that we are more than just support coaches. We're brothers, fathers, Uber drivers, counselors, therapists, like we're all of the above. And just hearing that reminds me that our students are more than just students. Like they're too students, their parents, their therapists, other people, like they're dealing with a whole lot. So we can give them the tools and resources to be able to face a lot of their problems. We think that I have a positive impact because we see sometimes students will let fear or uncertainty stop them cold in their tracks instead of trying to grow through a situation. So we try to build them up in a sense where they're more apt to wanting to deal with some issues or just reaching out for help, just dealing with whatever situation in a positive way that's beneficial to their circumstance. And then again, stable social connections. I can speak to myself and some of the support coaches because we've shared a lot of stories. Like we wouldn't be here without a lot of the connections that we've made over the years. And even Shane organizing this webinar for all of us to connect in this way, to share something that's valuable for us. But how do we transfer that to our students so that they're able to build some of these connections so that when they're at some point, like they have a resource guide or somebody they can reach out to. Like it's cool to see we have a few students that transferred to Kutztown University and they'll still jump on some of our programs or reach out to us for something. So it's just really good to create some of those social connections to support our students. And then that vulnerability when plans fail. Al is really big on our students about creating plans, because we can have an idea of how something will go and it doesn't. 2020 happened. Like none of us imagined this year would go how it has gone and how it's not even over yet. So being vulnerable to admit, like, okay, this didn't go how we wanted it to go, but still having that resilience, that grit, all of those cool words that we like to throw around to make sure our students come back every day and show up as their best selves. And that resilience piece is the piece that ties it all in together, because our students are resilient. Trust me, some of the circumstances and the situations that they deal with, I couldn't have come up with for even the best movie. So, and then they still show up every day to CCP, but it's just really just connecting them to the resources and giving them that strength to know that they're not alone in this journey. Even though we might not be able to relate specifically to a situation, we can find the resources or put it all together just to support them through anything that they're going through.
Thank you, Pat. And now we really want to switch over to our breakout session. And so this is a really awesome opportunity for us to, connect individually with a support coach. So the way it's going to lay out is you'll have an opportunity to join one of 4 breakout rooms or stay in the general session. So if you're more interested in learning more about life skills, please connect with Corey in breakout room 1. For more on the leadership development side, please connect with Pat in breakout room 2. For the mental health work that we do, please connect with Al in breakout room 3. And then you can connect with me in breakout room 4 to talk more about careers work. And then for all of our senior leaders in our webinar today, feel free to hang out in the general room that we're in right now to speak more with future Dr. Perkins, AKA future Dr. Bossman.
That never gets
It never gets old.
no.
Okay, so everyone's been invited to join a breakout room. Go ahead and pick the one that you would like to pick. You might need to look on the bottom of your screen where the breakout rooms are located to be able to pick and join one. The breakouts will be 15 minutes, and then we'll be back in the main session.
Sorry, y'all. I don't know how to find these breakout rooms.
Yeah, I haven't been added, I don't think.
Let's see. Corey, you're
Yeah,
here.
breakout one.
Got it? Okay.
No, I didn't get it yet. I'm going to 1 though, right?
Yes.
Yeah, nothing has popped up for me yet.
So it's like half the people are in and half are not.
Yeah, I also haven't received anything to join the.
I'm still here.
So maybe I can try this a different way. Who's going to breakout room 1?
Corey Delaney.
All right, Corey, let's see if I can just assign you. Let's just go old school.
Yeah.
There you go.
Corey's in 1.
There it is.
Any,
Thank you.
You good? Anybody else in 1? Going to 1? Can you say your name, please? You're blocked by my list.
Nika.
Nika? All right, Nika, I got you. Let me grab you here. I'd like to know, I know you talked about the need to be an administrator and to really kind of put on a couple different hats.
Yes.
Like, I just want to know, like, what kind of walls are you pushing up against?
Janine, it's a great question, right? So it was interesting because I think it was probably my second year there, had experience with a particular student, and the student informed Kevin, because I think it was one of Kevin's mentees, cohort members, and said that one of the faculty members thought that CME was discriminatory, right? And was very open in sharing that with not only with the student, but also, and I'm sure if he shared that with a student, then I'm sure he felt comfortable sharing that with other people. And so I think at that particular point in time, I recognized that, okay, just because we are here and on campus doesn't necessarily mean that we're supported in ways, right? And so what I had to do is really begin to reimagine myself as a program director. A part of our outcomes is based not only on persistence, but also in academic outcomes. But we don't control what happens in the classroom, right? But we held accountable just in terms of our work. And so what I knew I had to do was begin to be a part of different committees where these kind of decision-making and these kind of belief systems were happening. So not in terms of being academic student success, but also my academic support program, but also a lot of my work then began to be centered around diversity, inclusion, and equity. And so I had to go where they were in their particular spaces. And it's been a challenge because, again, not everyone, there are too many people at the college, and I think see any issues regarding diversity, inclusion, as equity as a dirty word, right? It's all about what I'm not doing. And even in my conversations, it's been more about, for certain people, being more accept at being called a racist than actually being racist, right? And doing those particular things and having those kind of policies. And so for me, it's been really about how do I now navigate those particular spaces and control the narrative in terms of what is actually happening. And so not only relying on the data, but also relying on, you know, what is currently happening in our society, right? And using that as a lens in terms of how the work that we're doing. It's interesting in the past, what I think in the past 6 months, you know, with the social uprising and everything else that's been going on in the community, in our nation and world, actually, is that I've been given much more space to be honest and be transparent, and actually push for things that I don't think that we wouldn't have been able to get moving in any other kind of circumstance, right? And so kind of taking advantage of the opportunity and having to understand the urgency of the now and recognizing that this now window of opportunity to be much more, to drive equity and balanced policies and at the institution is not going to be continued, right? Because now the intention is there and people are much more receptive to it. And so not only in terms of what we're doing with our teaching sessions, our monthly teaching sessions that we're doing, but just in terms of the different types of diversity and inclusion workshops that we are doing. And so we're talking about, you know, critical race theory, right? We're talking about culturally responsive pedagogy. We're talking about what racism looks like, not in overt and covert ways in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And so we've been much more intentional and bold in terms of what we're doing. And we're also recognizing that CME is about social justice. And so I think in previous administrations at our institution where we've had, even being recognized as being, you know, serving, you know, men of color, or particularly black men, is that we also have to be very congealed with it, right? and not be bold in terms of who we are and what we're doing. And at this point in time, we're not, right? This is who we are. This is circumstances that we find ourselves in. This is how you are contributing to our particular students' issues and barriers. And this is what we're going to hold you accountable of changing. And so there's definitely been barriers, but just as those barriers have existed, I think we've been much more intentional and bold and brazen in certain ways of acknowledging what those particular barriers are and calling them out and holding them accountable.
Thank you, sir. And more power to you.
That's along those lines as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have a program. It's called Brother Speak. I don't know if you guys remember it, but
yeah, you were on campus, yeah.
Exactly. For a couple of years, working with a lot of y'all young men, sexual health and sexual education, that kind of thing. Did in this newer time, let's say in the last year or two, even, have you had any kind of, I kind of would imagine that the kind of pushback relative to race and ethnicity on a campus like this? Anything about working specifically with men in these last couple of years? You know, I mean, we talked about the patriarchy a little bit. That any pushback in that world? Because again, my programming is working with all young Black men as well.
You talking about for, at the college or?
Yeah, at the college. I mean, in any conversation, especially how you said, you know, having to be like an administrator and in a world that's now that, and rightly so, we want to focus on what is offered to, you know, women as well.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Oh, got you. Great question. Yes. So we've had a lot of pushback in terms of the work that we're doing, and particularly because of the work that we're doing and the holistic approach that we're taking is that particularly for our institution, we've had a lot of females wanting a similar type of program, right? A similar type of effort. And like, why don't we have these particular things? We having these kind of issues and understandings in the same way, and actually in more ways than you know, some males. And what we do, there are similar programs on campus that are geared to female. But what we want to do, particularly for our program, is really go back to the data, right? And so it was, even as we're looking at the data, 67% of our students students, our Black students, are female, right? And so but yet the Black males have the highest retention, the lowest retention rates in academic outcomes in comparison. And so just in terms of just bare need, we do recognize, of course, that females also dealing with the same type of issues, but we know particularly for men, is that they need additional support. So in my particular meetings, when I'm looking at the data, we can look at our starfish, for example. So our starfish data tracks flags for our students if they have any issues in any of their classes. When we looked at the data, Black males were 4 times as likely to receive a flag than any other group on campus. So we looked at that. We also looked at the data in terms of withdrawing from a class. So Black males were 4.2 times as likely to drop 2 or more classes within a semester, right? We looked at in terms of that, and also in terms of the retention rates. And so as we looking at the services that we provide, we always go back to the data. We understand that, of course, that other issues, other groups are facing different issues, and we're not saying that they don't, but what we're saying is that Black men, particularly on this particular campus, are having the larger barriers to academic success. And so that's why we provide these kind of resources into it. But also too, and just in terms of for our students, for the institution, but also for our students in terms of how do they now face these kind of challenges in the classroom. And so if they don't feel affirmed and supported in the classroom, what our students do is they advocate for themselves and they don't return, right? But at their own detriment. And so what we try to do is kind of build them up too in terms of their understanding of what type of proactive kind of approaches that they can take in order to sustain. But also it's about being vulnerable and talking to us. Most of them, they talk to us at the 11th hour, right? When everything is going wrong, and then they come to you, this is what's going on in my life. Can you now fix it? And we're like, yo, we've been here since day one, and now you come in at the 11th hour trying to help, right? And see, college not for me, right? But no, so what we try to do is build in that kind of support and that kind of open avenues where students can feel comfortable and vulnerable, but also more importantly, courageous enough to have those kind of conversations in the time in which they need it. And also too, when we're talking about some of the pushback between, also when we're looking at how they, in terms of racial identity. So a lot of our students, particularly in our program, were some of the issues that they were facing were now about systemic racism. It wasn't about being depressed. It wasn't about their academic ability. It wasn't about poverty. It wasn't about all these other issues. They define this as being Black, right? And so once it's about being Black, then they're removing themselves in terms of any kind of control and this kind of learned helplessness, right? I can't face this kind of issues. I can't deal with these kind of issues. I can't face them. I can't combat them because it's not because of these institutions and how they function. It's because of my Blackness, right? And so what we also had to do is have a different kind of conversation with our students. Is that your Blackness isn't the issue. Systemic racism is the issue, right? And the ways that we don't talk about them and the ways that they directly impact you has a direct impact in terms of your relationship with academia. And so we recognize, again, the issues that our students are dealing with, and that particularly with our Black female students, that they're having the same types of issues, but just in terms of the need and the results that are happening, that we know that we've had to put an emphasis on how we support and wrap around services around Black and brown men on our campus.
I'm just going to jump in real quick. I was going to just add a couple minutes since it took us a minute to get rolling with the breakout. So if that's okay with everybody, I'll just let the breakouts continue for another couple minutes.
Okay. No, thank you. But great question, Walt. Yeah.
I'm doing something similar to what you guys are doing today. We are at the end of our program and grant and research study for Brother Speak. I can put a link in the chat. Right. It'll look similar, but we'll be talking about sexual health and our research on young Black men relative to their communities and some of the choices that they're making.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. So
I do have 2 questions.
Sure.
The first being just around impact. So kind of beyond, and I think that slide that talked about impact really talked more through the lens of participation. I mean, when you're looking at grad rates, what are your graduation rates looking like? And since you've been doing this for 11 years, like what is that, what is your impact that you're seeing there at the institution? And then kind of the last piece is, what role do you see women playing in this work? So I'm at an institution where we are 90% male. And yeah, we only have a couple of African-American men who are on faculty and staff. And I can say probably I've been engaged in this work for a very long time. But I'm, of course, doing it through the lens of being female.
Yes.
And so just like to hear some of your feedback, you know, around that.
Yeah, great question. So when we initially started the program, it was for full-time students, right? But what we quickly recognized is that the majority of our students would start off full-time and then transition to part-time. And so what we had to do was then make the shift in terms of supporting both full-time and part-time students. So on average, our students graduate within 4.5, well, actually 4.4 years. And that's because they start off being, you know, full-time and then transition to full-time. I mean, I'm sorry, start off full-time, but then transition to part-time. And some of the challenges of part-time, of course, being part-time, then it takes them longer, of course, to graduate from college. But also, too, when they switch to part-time, just the different priorities and challenges that part-time students have in terms of graduation is much more intense than full-time students due to competing priorities in terms of, you know, work, family obligations. And then we also too recognize when the federal government made a shift in terms of financial aid, particularly around satisfactory achievement progress, how that impacted our particular students. And so that also made a huge impact in terms of how students were able to navigate the process. And so when as you know, being in this work for as long as you have in terms of changing the completion rate to 67%. And so if a student in that first semester don't do well, right, and then right now they have already set themselves up for making it that much more difficult for them to persist in terms of meeting that 67% completion rate. And so those are kind of the challenges that we have faced with our students. And also too, just in terms of how the college, well, how the federal government even see persistence. And so they don't necessarily, they see persistence from fall to fall. And just in terms of our program, we recognize students that don't necessarily come in the fall, but also come in the spring. And so how we capture those particular data too has made it tricky in terms of the work that we're doing. But those in terms of our graduation rates, and actually our graduation rates is on par with our overall college rates at the institution. But in terms of your last question regarding as a female in terms of your impact, one, I think is just very important for it just in my, you know, understanding. It's just in terms of your recognition of the work in terms of holistically, right? In terms of your impact in your world too. I think too often is, particularly when we're working with our men or working with our females, you know, don't necessarily see the level of impact and value because it's like you're a woman, how can you particularly relate to what the issues that I'm dealing with? But we also know, just in terms of any kind of civil rights movement, any kind of social justice movement, that Black women have been at the forefront in terms of everything that we have done, in terms of how we have helped to change those particular narratives. So just as particularly bringing exposure and bringing attention and bringing your voice to the table, I think is relevant and but also is central to the work that we're doing. But also too, I think as particularly as men being in these particular spaces, to elevate your voices as well, right? To those particular tables, and so that your voices are heard and able to help kind of drive the policies that are really impacting the students here on campus. And so that your gender should not be the determinant factor in terms of your value and your input in terms of these particular spaces, but that we have to open those particular spaces, make you as a firm and affirming in terms of what the value that you bring, the lens that you bring, in order to really make a impact in terms of the work that we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Thank you, everybody.
Tail end of that, but that, yeah, what my supervisor said, yep.
Right. No, because I mean, it's an honest conversation, right? Particularly around the work that we're doing, and particularly for recognition of the work that Black women in particular have done, and particularly around this particular effort. Even though that has been, male-centered, is really taking this much more global approach in terms of how we really change the narrative. And too often they're not a part of the conversation in the ways that they need to be a part of it. And so it's important that we recognize those spaces, and in order to be really transformative, that we also about what allyship looks like, right? And so they are just as much as a part of the, not allyship, but also accomplices in the work that we're doing in order to change the life trajectory, not only of Black men, right? But also these Black men affect Black women. And so we want to recognize that in terms of creating those spaces for them to make sure that their voices are heard and respected.
And in terms of creating space, you actually set me up for like the perfect segue, boss. So one of the things that I just put in the chat was our resource share. So I know we have roughly 10 minutes left, but when you go to that link, you should be able to see the following, not this. You'll actually see this guide. So what it is a way to start taking away some of the stuff that we've talked about. So we share a brief about section, which is directly from our website. We have our approach again. So if you wanted to see the framework and the way that we're taking our work and really use it as a mirror for your work and say, okay, I know we have life skills and career achievement down, for example, but I think we can dial up academic supports. This is just another tool for reference. This is a great photo of our guys doing the work for our career achievement program. And then in here is a questions to consider space, and then a reflection space. So a lot of the resource guides that we've been seeing in the sessions that we've participated in as a staff, everyone has great, outcomes. They share the resources, but then your takeaways, you have to go dig for the chat. You have to go find your notes. And so here is a space for you to take notes. You should be able to download and actually type in this PDF. Unfortunately, Google Drive isn't showing the fillable space, but once you download the PDF, we've set it up in a way where you can type in there directly. I see that there's an issue with opening the link. Thank you for that note, Kevin. What I'll do is I'll email Hillary and Janine directly, and then they'll blast out the PDF for the sake of time. And then we have the names and emails of our folks who are doing this work. That way you can speak directly to our point people, and we ensure that we can keep this amazing work going. And another thing that you can also do is stay connected with us. So this is our website. We have a pretty solid Instagram following. A lot of our you can actually see one of our early virtual sessions down in our feed, where we did a motivation through times of crisis session with one of our students who's I believe 3-time author and motivational speaker, on top of being a CME student, on top of supporting students at the credit union on campus. So it's a very powerful hour session. But we wanted to kind of highlight this connection piece here, and then really kind of close out with any other discussion points, any other questions that you might have that you might not have been able to touch on in the breakout rooms. Yeah, what's on everyone's mind?
Shane, there's a question in the chat. Leanne was talking about, does this program exist? This program exists at CCP only, and are there similar programs available in the area?
So CME exists only right now at CCP. There are similar Black male initiatives, or BMIs as they're coded, across higher ed. We've been in conversation with Montgomery County Community College on how they could replicate something like this. You'll see the Black Male United centers across Westchester. You'll see it at the University of Pennsylvania. And actually, Drexel University is starting a Center for Black Culture. So you'll see that hopefully pop up. As a Drexel alum, I'm going to be like nudging them to say like, hey, y'all need to do an initiative here. And actually, we have a CME student at Drexel that I'm trying to connect with the center. Boss, I'm not sure if you've seen anything else in the Philadelphia area, but we also have some resources on specific Black male initiatives that we can send out as well.
Right. So yes, we also have had conversations with Delaware County Community College, and also in Northampton and Virginia, as well as in terms of the work that we're doing. But even in their programs, it's much more as a boutique programming and not necessarily institutionalized. And so what we're trying to do is make our work institutionalized. And so that's where now our next expansion. So we've already from giving support from not only the president, but also the vice president in terms of how we're expanding CME in terms of serving not only more students of color, which is exciting just in terms of the work that we're doing in terms of the impact. But we know that just in terms of scale, some of the issues and some of the things that we want to do in CME that will only become impactful if it becomes institutionalized in terms of particularly as related around our culturally responsive pedagogy, as well as critical race theory. And in terms of, until that is kind of filtered throughout the institution, there will always be a need for a Black male program such as this. And so our goal is not to make these again, boutique programs, but make the work that we're doing. If it works for CME, then it should work for the students at our particular program, then it should work for all students, right? And so particularly some of the work that we're doing, and then if we can make that much more institutionalized, we can see much greater impact. But we have definitely been receiving a lot of questions and concerns from other institutions who are seeing the work that we're doing and how they can actually do similar work at their institutions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we have 5 minutes left. Any other closing thoughts? So Hillary raised a fantastic question. In terms of the grant that we received from the U.S. Department of Education, future Dr. Perkins, aka future Dr. Bossman, could you highlight that?
Yes, so actually it's through the Department of Education, and ironically enough, it's through their predominantly Black institution grant. So even though we're a community college, 50% of our students are students of color. And so that's the way that we were able to get funding for the program. What was interesting about this particular year is that it's really based on a 5-year grant. And so year 1 was a pilot year. After that, in year 2010, we received a 5-year grant through the program. And then after 2015, before President Obama left, the authorization, he extended the authorization through 2020. And that's where we were able to extend funding. Right now, the authorization has not been extended. And, you know, given this administration, you know, right. So, but in the period of COVID, because of, we weren't, essentially most of our work had to become remote, and we weren't able to do the same kind of level of services that we were able to do under certain normal circumstances, that the funding extended through a whole year. But the college also stepped up and to provide us with additional funding to support the work. And so again, for my belief, particularly around this kind of work, is that your budget reflects your values. And so if the institution is now providing not only in-kind, but also financial contribution, then they're really not supporting the work that we're doing. And so, and then as you're looking at grants, Hillary, and providing this information, I strongly encourage those particular people to hold your institution accountable for their financial contribution as well. Because in the absence of that, then we're talking about sustainability for the programming. And so the work that we're doing right now with our students, if funding ending, then what happens with those particular students that we're serving? Unless the institution steps up, then the work is not necessarily in vain, but it's not really about equity balance and about reducing the achievement gap, right? And so again, your budget reflects your values, so strongly encourages your particular institutions to step in and step up as appropriate.
Fantastic, and I think that's a great way to close this out. I know from the CME side, we have no more closing thoughts. We are incredibly grateful to FEN for giving us the opportunity to kick off their fall programming. And I'll pass it back over to Janine and Hillary for any last minute housekeeping and closing thoughts.
Just to say thank you all very much, particularly to Derek, to Pat, to Corey, to Al, to Shane for your presentation today, and give Ms. Hope our regards when you go back. But we really appreciate both hearing what's been working for young people as well as what you plan to do and what you hope to continue to do with those students as well. And I would just encourage everyone on the call to keep in touch, not only with each other, but again, with us at FEN. We would love to push out what's happening at your institutions, in your programs, and also to push out the resources and those things that you come across that you think would be helpful for others to know about and to hear. So with that, thank you all. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you at the next time.
Yes.
Take care.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Good job, everyone. Yay. I'll add everyone to our mailing lists and check the boxes of who attended, and can even edit the video. I don't think we'll have to do much. I think just the dead space